everyone. Heather with Fireside Strategic. Welcome to our video cast, Humanity Builds Better Businesses, where we celebrate leaders that do transformational work within organizations, helping their clients grow and lead teams with humanity. We are so lucky today to be joined by Ariana Friedlander, who is the founder of Rosabella Consulting. Welcome, Ariana, to our video cast.
Hi, Heather. Thanks so much for having me here. It's a pleasure.
I'm excited to have you here, and I would love it as an intro to those that are watching. Tell us a little bit about you and what brought you into coaching.
Wow, that's a really big question. So a little bit about me. I started Rosabella Consulting 10 years ago because I had a desire to earn a living while being true to myself. And realized that the best way for me to do that was to connect with my entrepreneurial spirit. And at the time, I was really tired of seeing leaders read the latest leadership book, spout the terminology, and do something completely different. Walking the talk's very important to me. So I wanted to bridge that kind of knowing doing gap for people.
Ooh, I love that. I'm taking notes while we talk. The knowing doing gap. And how's it going?
It's going great. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, tell me first, how did you come up with the name with Rosabella? Is there a story behind that?
Oh, there is definitely a story behind that name. So I lost my grandmother, Rose Pezzatelli, a year before I started my business. And she was the rock in my life. I loved her dearly. And when she departed, I just felt so lost without her. And so as part of the grieving process, I came up with the name Rosabella Consulting. It means beautiful rose in Italian. And my grandmother had a knack for seeing the beauty in everything. And she had a positive disposition that was contagious and a really strong work ethic. And she just made people feel amazing. And so I just wanted to embody her values in my work. And once the name came to me, I thought, I'm doing it because grandmom's my silent partner.
I love that. And how do those values impact how you work with your clients?
Oh, they impact me every day. There's always challenges in working with clients and just in general in life, right? Before we started the recording, we were talking about the importance and value of being flexible, that life happens, that things don't always go the way we plan. I'll do one-on-one coaching and I also do training and group coaching. And so there are times where we step into a situation and it doesn't go as we anticipated. Something comes up and we need to be able to be nimble. And I think that care and concern for others allows me to recognize the value in that nimbleness and flexibility instead of this rigid, it has to be a certain way approach.
I love that, right? Because that never works out. You'll be constantly disappointed if you expect things to go according to plan, right?
Yeah, totally.
Well, tell me a little bit about your journey to coaching. Was it something in your own personal life? Was it something in a business life? What brought you to this type of work? I'd love to learn.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And one I haven't reflected on in a while, so I'll probably surprise myself. But I have always been, not like this is in the past, but I've always been the friend that people call on when they're in dire straits, when they're really struggling with something, they need someone that will be a confidant, that they know will hold space for them feeling however they're feeling, and that will provide gentle nudges.
Oh, love that.
Yeah. And so that, just kind of naturally led into me coaching with clients because that's just how I like to interact with people in general. Now, that said, I also, when I started my business, it has morphed and evolved and I've pivoted because, what else are you going to do?
Right.
Either pivot or go get a job. So, when I started, I was writing like business development strategies for clients.
Okay.
And I found that incredibly stressful and infuriating because I would literally stay awake at night worrying about the strategy I was developing for them. And was it right or wrong? how are they going to react to it, you know? And then I would spend all this time and effort putting something together, and like they did what they wanted to do regardless. And so I found that just such a waste of my energy, and not really helpful for them. But when I stepped into those coaching conversations, that's where I saw the magic happen.
Okay.
And
what was it typically that held them back then, do you think, from making those changes, like from the business development aspect of that? Was there something that was a common thread that you found, or tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I think, in retrospect, I can see the lack of buy-in, right? I was really approaching it as the service provider that has the answers for them, and I thought that's what they wanted from me. And so, but they really, I think we act like we want people to tell us what to do. But then if we don't like what they tell us, we're going to do the opposite anyway.
Yep. Guilty. Yep.
Yeah. And so I think that was just happening, and so I think that there wasn't this sense of, a buy-in and a commitment to the idea, because they didn't always see the why. They didn't always see like the purpose. And so in coaching conversations, you can tie into that with people. Right. And you can nudge them gently into these ways where like they suddenly have this brilliant idea. And it's like you kind of could see that that's where it would be valuable for them to go. But they get there on their own. And usually they get there with elements that you could never have anticipated.
Tell me about a time when that happened, without keeping in mind privacy, right?
Sure.
But is there something that you can share that you've experienced along those lines?
Yeah. So I was coaching one client. She, and I do a lot of work with the neuroscience of conversation. And so I work with a lot of clients that are stuck in these unhealthy patterns. And so she had these personal traumas and a professional trauma. They happened at the same time. And she lost her mojo. She just wasn't keeping her cool at work anymore. And she was getting into yelling matches with her boss.
Oh.
And she was a highly specialized professional and incredibly good at her job. And they did not want to lose her. And she didn't want to depart either. And so she came to me for coaching. And, we were going through exploring, what are these triggers and where do they come from? And how can we create more awareness of the triggers as they're happening? And as we're having that conversation, she says, I know what you want me to do. And I go, really? What?
Do tell.
And she says, you want me to track my triggers in my journal. And I was like, that is so brilliant. I didn't actually think of that, but yes.
Now we do.
You totally should do that.
What a great idea.
Right. Yeah. And so she did. And it was really powerful. And the journal is a tool I use a lot with clients, and her in particular. What ended up happening was she would get triggered in a conversation with her boss. He didn't change, but she recognized for herself, I can go journal about this later. I don't have to react
in the moment. Oh, that's powerful.
Yeah. And so much of that came from the tracking.
Okay. Well, and I planned on doing this a little bit later, but I think now is a really good time. One thing that is prominent on your website, and I can tell in your practice, tell me about the power of journaling. I'd love to, it's going to be good, but tell me about that.
How much time do we have?
Y'all settle in, get your popcorn, get your drinks, because we're going to talk about some journaling.
Yeah, I mean, journaling is so powerful. It's transformed my life time and time and time again. Okay. And I really think, for me personally, and what I see with my clients as well, and what I see are the habits we have as a society we're in this go, 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 rush, 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 do mindset and place. And so when we're always in that go, rush, do place, we're not like thinking clearly. And so I think that really is one of the benefits of journaling, is that it slows down our thinking in the moment. And so we shift from this reactivity kind of fear-based place of being to a more rational, holistic, mindful, and intentional place.
I'm taking notes.
You could come back and listen later,
Yes, I'm fully aware, but this is good stuff. This is really good stuff. And it sounds like for that client, right, that was something that's powerful. Do you find it to be powerful with other clients who maybe aren't in a reactive type of scenario? Like, what other ways is it helpful?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have one client that I've worked with for years that has, I personally have a very cruel and mean inner critic. And this client does not. It turns out not everybody's inner critic can I curse?
Yeah.
And yet not everyone's inner critic shit talks on them.
Gotcha.
Shocker. I was shocked. I was like, wow, you're
right?
So
because that would be kind of an assumption.
Yeah. So his didn't. And so that was really amazing.
Yeah.
And yet he did have these patterns. Again, it's like these patterns and these ways of showing up that were not helping him. And part of it was that when he ascended into an executive level position, he was still really young. He was the youngest person to actually hold this position in the organization ever. Okay. And so everything that had gotten him to that point was not going to help him succeed where he was at. He had to work on things like delegating the tasks that he used to just do himself, and planning out his days, and not just being able to respond and react to fires constantly, and long-term thinking and strategic thinking, navigating conflict with employees, really managing up and managing down simultaneously.
Which is a lot to learn. I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah. And so for him, journaling was this practice of assimilation, of really synthesizing and processing what was happening and what he was learning and the challenges, and making forward progress. And so in between every session, I've always do customized journaling prompts for my clients.
Oh, okay. Tell me what that is.
Yeah. So, I listen to what we're discussing, and I just come up with a list of questions that are really pertinent and salient to the challenges that they might be dealing with.
Okay.
And really just like they're those nudges, they're those open and honest questions that just get them thinking in new and different ways. And so I would always provide a list of those between every session. And so he would come back, and I would always check in. How are those prompts? Are they helpful? Too many? Because some people, it's like, can you give me 3? And he was like, give me 13. That's fine.
Nice. Okay, good.
And so, there was so much growth and progress that happened between sessions because he was doing deep, purposeful thinking through his journaling practice.
What would you have done if that was something that made him uncomfortable and he was resistant? Have you ever had that experience?
Oh, sure. Yeah. It's interesting. I have some people that are very resistant to journaling, and they like writing assignments though.
Okay.
Or, it's you don't have to journal about this. Just plant. It's a seed. You're just planting it in your head and see what comes later. Go for a walk. You don't have to
do something.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I always tell people journaler's choice. That's one of my rules.
Okay. What does that mean?
There's not one right or wrong way to journal. There's the best way for you.
Boy, we could put that into place in a lot of things in life, couldn't we? And in business. I feel like that belongs on a bumper sticker or a t-shirt, right? Like that's really powerful.
Well, and I think that we have a propensity towards very black and white thinking, good and bad, right or wrong. And so we look at so many situations that way, and journaling is just one practice of many other things, to your point, where we think, oh, am I doing this right?
Exactly. And do you find the black and white thinking, and I'm so glad that you brought that up, because oftentimes we talk, when we're working with high level executives, right? there's boxes that have to be checked, and there is black and white, and oftentimes not great. How do you handle that when someone is very much in that black and white thinking and you want to introduce that middle ground? Is that something that you see as you go up the ladder with an organization?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I feel like for many people, not all, obviously, but many leaders have an ability to see shades of gray, and that's part of how they rise into different opportunities. But I've always come back to asking questions. Just asking for further clarity. One of the things we talk about in the framework that I am certified in, that's based on neuroscience, called conversational intelligence, we have a practice called double clicking. And so that's where we will take a specific word or phrase and say, well, tell me what that means.
Okay.
And so that is one of the techniques that I find is really helpful when someone is, well, it's just not going to work, right? Like that's one of those things. Well, I've tried that. There's no way that person is ever going to sign on, participate, engage, do what I ask, and so to say, well, tell me what that means. They'll never do it. And then we get, to these different deeper layers and uncover that, well, yeah, sure. If you approach them with a, you have to do this or else attitude, they're not going to do it.
Of course not. Right. It's in the delivery sometimes too. Okay. That's really interesting. Conversational intelligence. Yeah. That just sounds really interesting, but also really necessary. Right?
I agree.
And I think also in the society that we're in, where oftentimes conversations can be had via text, via email, where you don't have, I can't see your face, I can't hear your tone, I can't see the body language, right? So you can lose some of that in the translation. Do you work with that as well? Like the written word, the texted word, and helping with the conversational intelligence there also?
That's a really good question. Excuse me.
I just did the same thing.
Yeah, I was like, I need water.
Yep.
So yes, I'd say that my work with clients is moderately engaging with the written word with them. I mean, I think that journaling falls into that category, right?
Absolutely.
And I'll often work with clients to distinguish, like, when a conversation is adequate to be had, via email or text, and when it's necessary to have that conversation in person. And so being mindful of distinguishing that, I will, on occasion, I'll have a client share an email that they have drafted and ask, what do you think of this? And so, in those instances, for sure, I'll provide some feedback around, usually I'm asking like, well, what is the point you're trying to make? And how are you wanting the person to feel? And what's the ideal outcome here? And, I think a lot of times when we do default to email or texting and things like that, we're so quick to just respond in a knee-jerk reaction. And
sometimes you got to walk away and come back. There's a lot of power to that minute or 2 minutes.
So, and that's often what I encourage, draft it, move away, look it over, share with somebody to look over. Sometimes it's like, are you writing that for their benefit or for you?
Oh, good question too. Well, tell me a little bit about the clients that you work with. If you were going to build an ideal client for your coaching practice, right? What would that look like?
Yeah. So I'm working with leaders who are doing business as unusual.
Okay, what does that mean? I got to interrupt. What does that mean?
Yeah,
business
double click.
As unusual.
Double click on me. Go for it. So it means that they are challenging the status quo.
Ooh, okay.
So, they might be doing that in a well-established organization, and they're doing things differently than the way their predecessors have done it. And it could be in a new organization where they're disrupting the industry or even creating a new industry.
Wow. And how do you find them typically?
Well, I find that giving talks is really helpful way. Word of mouth is definitely, the best way.
Okay.
And just, really meeting people where they're at, prioritizing connecting first over getting the sale.
Mm. And what would you say, if there is an answer to this, what is a common challenge that your clients have in their business or executive life? Is there kind of a common thread or a theme for that?
Yeah, I would say a common thread or theme is a disconnect that, my clients really care about their people. I think that's what appealed to me about the fireside strategic chats, is
Right.
that it's like human centric, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
my clients are the same. They really care about their people.
I love that.
Yeah, and they really care about fostering opportunities for their people to grow and develop, and they often are experiencing some kind of disconnect where either they're having trouble getting the buy-in and support for their vision, which is commonly a problem for leaders in existing organizations. Where they
Right.
have people that have been with the team for years, and we've always done it this way, and why would we
Mm-hmm.
change now? And so they're wondering, like, how do they build a bridge there
Right.
between where they've been and where they want to go.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's a disconnect in, like, they care about their people, but they're having trouble having the impact that they want. Their
Okay.
intentions aren't always matching their impact, especially
Oh.
for the entrepreneurs I work with. We are so emotionally invested in our businesses. And then you
Yeah.
bring team members on, and it can be really hard to not let that emotional investment turn into unhealthy reactions.
Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes too, it's the letting go, right, of what you've had your fingers on, all the things. That's what an entrepreneur does at the beginning, but letting go and recognizing that there are other ways to achieve, right, and learning that as part of the growth as well.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So, what do you have on tap for you and your business? Would you say in the next year? What does that look like, or what do you want to have happen?
Oh, man. Well, I think all of us are in that space of, and so what's life in business going to look like now? We're kind of inching into
Mhm.
post-COVID world.
Right, the new
And
normal.
yeah, and we know it's not going to be the same. So
Mhm.
definitely, I'm in that place of navigating and exploring, okay, what does this look like now moving forward?
Mhm.
I've been hosting these journal jams online, which have been super fun.
Tell me what a journal. I know what it is, but for
Yeah,
everybody watching, what is a, first of all, really cool name. What
thanks.
is a journal jam? Tell me about that.
Yes. So journal jams are opportunities for big thinkers to come together and figure it out.
Ooh,
And
love that.
thanks. Yeah. And what we do is we have time for people to connect,
Mhm.
have really deep, meaningful conversations, and then some guided journaling prompts,
Okay.
then time for journaling. And so
Love
you
it.
actually get to make that commitment to
Mhm.
give yourself time and attention.
Tell me a little bit as we're coming close on our time together, what I would love to hear, and again, with the interest of privacy, working with an executive on their conversational intelligence, on journaling, on all of the messaging, how does that ripple affect those that are in the organization under them? What have you seen, either positive, I would imagine not negative, but what does that look like?
Oh, yeah, it has a tremendous benefit,
Mm-hmm.
for sure, because we're all hardwired to want to connect and belong.
Yes.
That's a part of our shared humanity. And
Mm-hmm.
so when the leaders that I'm working with are, not navigating that need well,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that does cascade into quite toxic experiences.
Yes.
Whereas when they are able to navigate that need well, there is so much trust and camaraderie. that people have. And that's, that's what I have seen for clients that have been navigating the pandemic, where they're just amazed at what their teams have been able to accomplish in the last year. There's one team I worked with that was like literally right before the pandemic struck, virtual working doesn't work for us. Remote working doesn't work for us. We can't do that.
Guess what?
And then not long after, boom, remote 100%. And, that team has just gelled together and supported each other so well. And as people have had different challenges or needs come up in their lives, they've stepped in to support each other, allowing the people that need to have that space for personal time get it. And what's even better, they outperformed as a team.
Interesting? That is really interesting that what they thought was absolutely not going to work when they didn't have a choice. And I'm finding too, and I don't know if you've noticed this as well, but a deeper connection, I think, in these workplaces that have gone from in-person to remote, right? Because everybody has a kid in the background or a dog in the background or a delivery that comes or whatever it might be. Everybody has that. And I think it humanizes the experience as well. It absolutely does. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we see each other as whole people when we're able to get a glimpse into
lives outside of the cubicle, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I absolutely love what you're putting out in the world. Your clients are so lucky to have you. Such a unique ability. And I really can see how those ripples are going to impact so many people. So in closing, and I hope you don't mind if I do this, if there is someone that is watching this that is not familiar with journaling or hasn't done it themselves yet, is there a prompt that you can give that might start that process?
So many.
I know. But is there one like for a newbie, right? It's like, I don't know what would.
Yeah. So I will share one that a client actually just told me yesterday. He said he just finished reading my book and he was like, this one prompt, oh my gosh, so amazing. So hopefully other people will find it that way too, now that I've set such high expectations. It's not a question necessarily. It's just starting with these 3 words, here I am.
Ooh, okay.
So sometimes getting started is the hardest part. For people. And I always encourage, with our journaling practices to approach journaling as an observer of your own life, like as though you were a researcher writing field notes about your life without reacting as best you can. I mean, we're human, so it might happen. But just to write down observations about your inner and outer world. I think part of the challenge for some people, especially people that are new or might be closed off to writing for various reasons, is to, you just have to open the gates. So by writing here I am and writing observations about what that means for you. So I have a number of journal entries that start with, here I am sitting at the kitchen table, or here I am thinking in my sitting chair. Sitting in my thinking chair. I did not write that dyslexically.
But I knew exactly what you meant. So all good. I love what a great way to start it, because there's always going to be something to put after that, right? There's always going to be something, and that can start that stream of consciousness and the journaling.
Yeah.
I love all of this. And again, your clients are really, really lucky to have you. So thank you so much for joining me here today to share. It was such a pleasure to speak with you.
Likewise. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Heather. It's been a pleasure.
You are so welcome. Take care.
Thanks. You too.